When Jesus is being questioned what the most important commandment is, he says the statement, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so we go around and we love to talk about love, 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 love. And it's the month formerly known as June, now known as Pride Month. And you're going to be hearing about love a lot and how to love others. So let's talk about what biblical love really is. Hello, welcome to the With God YouTube channel. My name is Dylan. I'm your host here. Now at the With God YouTube channel, it is the purpose and goal of this channel to help Christians solidify their worldview to stand with God and with the Bible on all issues in the world today, current, past, whatever, for us to view them through a biblical lens and stand with God. So today we're talking about what is a biblical love like. When Jesus said, love your neighbor as you love yourself, what does that mean? And we're going to look at that verse in full context. No doubt this month during Pride Month, as the LGBTQ stuff is pushed on social media and things like that, you're going to see people quoting Jesus saying, love your neighbor as you love yourself, be kind to them, love them, be nice to them, all this stuff. But what is biblical love? Well, we need to really look at the story that Jesus says this and what's happening. Jesus is being questioned by the religious leaders at this time, and they're trying to trick him. They're trying to trap him. They say, what is the most important commandment for us to follow? And this is where we're going to pick up right here. It's in Matthew chapter 22, verses 36 through 40. I'm reading out of the ESV. They say this, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And he said to them, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." So right there, we kind of start poking holes in theories already because they ask him, what's the greatest commandment? And he says, well, the first and greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. So above everything else, honor and glorify your God, worship him, and put nothing else above him. That is the first and greatest commandment right there. So if you're not doing that, you can't love others the way that he wants you to love them because God has to come first in that equation before we can truly love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Now, the next part may come to surprise you, but when Jesus preached and he used scriptures, which part of the Bible did he use? He used the law, the books written by Moses, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books. He used the historical books, and he used the books of the prophets. Those are the parts of the Bible that Jesus used. Why? Because those were the parts that existed at the time. Jesus believed and taught and knew all those because Jesus is God. Jesus is the Word. And so he preached from those scriptures. And so when Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, we tend to put ourselves in this mindset like this is a new novel concept that had never been said before throughout the Bible. When that's not true at all. Jesus is just reiterating what he said in the Old Testament, what God said, what he said in the Old Testament in the book of Leviticus. Jesus is quoting the book of Leviticus in chapter 19, and there's a lot of it you can read about how to love and what not to do and what that looks like. We're going to focus at the end of it, where at the end of the passage, God says, love your neighbor as yourself. So right here, Leviticus 19, 17 through 18, again, out of the NIV version this time, this is what it says. "Do not hate a fellow Israelite in your heart. Rebuke your neighbor frankly so you will not share in their guilt. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." So this is the part in the Bible that Jesus is referencing from Leviticus. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's where he's getting this from. And in Leviticus, it gives us the prescription for how to do that. If you want to love your neighbor as yourself, this is how you do it. Let's break down the verses. Let's start with 17. The first point we're going to be able to draw from it is point number 1, don't hate them. This one's kind of obvious. It's hard to love your neighbor if you hate them. Literally, verse 17, the first part of it says, do not hate a fellow Israelite in your heart. Don't hate them. Don't have any harbored anger or bitterness towards a brother or sister, towards your neighbor, because that's hating them and you can't love them if you're hating them. Duh, it's kind of obvious. Let's move on to point number 2. Rebuke them directly, openly, and honestly so that you will not share their guilt and sin. This is the opposite of telling them that their sin is okay and that it's accepted. So to love someone does not mean you have to accept the things that they do. That is actually contradictory to God's word in the Bible. We see this in the second half of verse 17. It says, rebuke your neighbor frankly so you will not share in their guilt. Imagine how much you would have to not love someone to wink and nod politely at their sin. Imagine if you went out to coffee with a buddy and he's sitting down, he's telling you, dude, I just started this new business. It's super awesome. I'm making like $3,000 a week. And you go, wow, what is it? And he goes, oh, I'm stealing catalytic converters. I'm rolling up to different places. I'm cutting off the catalytic converters and I'm stealing them. Would you congratulate your friend or would you tell him, no, that's wrong? If that stealing is a sin, you can't build a business on that. That's not God honoring. And if you're a Christian, you have to live your life in a way that's God honoring. So of course you would tell your friend they're sinning. You can't accept and applaud and celebrate their sin as they go on sinning, acting like it's no big deal. Because if you do, then you share in their guilt in the sin. Point number 3, don't take revenge or hold a grudge against your neighbor. At the beginning of verse 18, it says, do not seek revenge or bear grudge against anyone among your people. God's encouraging us right here. One way that it is to love your neighbor as you love yourself is to forgive them when they sin against you. Don't hold it against them. Don't harbor any bitterness towards them. Let's move on to point number 4, which is treat them as you would like to be treated yourself. In other words, be kind. And we see that in the second half of verse 18. He says, but love your neighbor as yourself. And then he commands all of us to do this, to love in this way, because he says, I am the Lord. He's the Lord of your life. And if you are going to follow him, he commands you do this. I'm your Lord. This is the way you love your neighbor as yourself. So if we had to sum it up, point number 1 is about being loving. We are supposed to be loving. Obviously, you cannot hate your neighbor. Point number 1, don't hate them. Be loving. Point number 2, rebuke them openly, honestly, and frankly. Don't wink and nod at their sin. Don't allow a brother to continue sinning. The third thing is to be forgiving. Don't hold a grudge. Don't be unforgiven. Don't have unforgiveness in your heart. Be forgiving. And our fourth point sums up, be kind. Be kind to them. So, how do you love your neighbor as you love yourself? According to the Bible, you have to be loving, you have to be honest, you have to be forgiving, and you have to be kind. When we wrap all those things together, that's truly what it means to love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's the part that Jesus is quoting back in Matthew. He's quoting it from Leviticus. That's how he wants you to love. That is what it means to biblically love your neighbor as yourself and to stand with God in this issue of what it means to love your neighbor. So don't wink and nod at sin. Don't approve people for sin, but love them. Be forgiving, be kind, and rebuke them frankly, openly, honestly, but with kindness and love. Anyways, that's it for this video, guys. If you liked the video, make sure you hit the like button and you hit the subscribe button. That would be great too if you want to see more videos like this. And while you're at it, hit the bell notification icon because that's how you're going to be notified when we upload a new video. And last but not least, make sure you comment below. Write a comment below and let me know what you thought about the video or maybe a future topic idea that you would like to see here on the channel that is dedicated to helping Christians grow and solidify a worldview that aligns with God and with His Word. God bless you and have a great day.